And coming up, yes, he really said it. President Obama saying we don't have an immediate crisis in terms of debt. Senator John Thune is on the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Thune, what do you think of that statement? Is there an immediate crisis or not?
It's amazing what a deaf ear the president has to what's going on around us. You have $16.7 trillion in debt. We'll add $10 trillion to it over the next decade. And while the president's been in office, we've added $6 trillion to the debt. And he also made the comment in the last couple of days that he didn't want to balance the budget just for sake of balancing the budget. Well, why else wouldn't you balance the budget? You balance the budget because we've got to get control of the runaway spending and the runaway debt. And he just keeps piling on more and more spending, and now they want yet even much higher taxes.
Why do you think he said that? Do you think they just sort of was careless in his speech? He was thinking immediate, meaning that he's got other more important things. I mean, like Social Security or Medicare. I mean, those are the things that we can probably, maybe that's a problem in a month, and that may not be immediate. Or, I mean, why do you think he used that term immediate? Was it sloppy, or is that the way he thinks that this is not a serious problem?
My view is it's the way he really thinks. I think he and many like him, many Democrats on Capitol Hill for that matter, don't think of this as a debt crisis because things haven't imploded yet. But that's going to happen. If we continue on the path that we're on, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so what the president ought to be focused on is working on structural reforms to government spending that will rein in out-of-control spending. And secondly, putting policies in place that will grow the economy. One of the things we need is to get the economy growing at a faster rate. When you're growing at 1.5% to 2%, and frankly, in the 4-year average since he's been president, it's been 0.8%. 0.8% has been the average economic growth. If we don't get economic growth, if we don't get spending under control, this thing gets progressively worse and starts spiraling out of control.
All right, he hasn't submitted a budget, and frankly, I don't know why. The House has been able to get one together, and so has the Senate now. So, so he could have gotten one together as well. Do you need a budget from him to begin working and trying to reconcile the House and the Senate budget? Do you have to have a budget from him?
Not necessarily, but it usually leads the process. This is the first time in 92 years that the president hasn't submitted his budget before the House and the Senate have acted on theirs. And so the good news in the Senate, this is a historic day after all. It's the first time in 4 years the Senate Democrats unveiled their budget today. The bad news is it raises taxes by $1.7 trillion. And it's a budget that doesn't balance in 10 years. It's something that when the American people get a close look at it and they compare that with what the House is doing in terms of trying to rein in spending and have a responsible approach to our federal budget process, there's going to be a real clear contrast. And I think the American people will pick up on that. What I believe is that the president continues to believe that we need to grow the economy, or grow the government. We believe we need to grow the economy, and his policies have been counter to that. They grow the government at the expense of growing the economy.
You know what I think is always sort of peculiar about all these budgets? You've got the Path to Prosperity, which is the House Republican budget, and now the Senate has come out, and the name of it is Foundation for Growth, Restoring the Promise of American Opportunity. What's wrong with just saying the Senate budget and the House budget? I mean, why do you try to, you guys sort of jazz up these names as though, it's sort of like you package it or brand it, and I think the American people they just want a budget.
Just give me a budget.
Just give me a budget.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's pretty straightforward. Most Americans deal with that, and I think most Americans also realize that they could live on what the House budget has proposed, a 3.4% increase in spending over the next 10 years, but it's $4.5 trillion less in spending than what the Senate Democrats are putting forward, and the Senate Democrat budget includes a $1.5 trillion tax increase on top of the $1.7 trillion tax increases that we've already seen under the administration.
They're going to do it, though, through closing loopholes and deductions, right?
Well,
that's the way the budget is. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden the rates are going up, at least as I understand the Senate budget.
Somebody's going to pay higher taxes because it doesn't matter how you define that. When you're talking about whether it's closing loopholes or you're talking about raising taxes,
pay more, right?
You're going to pay more in taxes. We believe that
many people think, though, the loopholes is someone got a bargain because someone had a lobbyist to come here and persuade you guys to give that person a loophole.
Right, but the point is you shouldn't have to raise taxes until you deal with spending. And the president's gotten tax increases. $620 billion in the fiscal cliff, $1 trillion in new taxes with Obamacare. Now he wants another $1.5 trillion in taxes. When are we going to deal with the spending? And that's what I think the American people want to see. And so when they talk about closing loopholes, we're all for that. But let's do it in the context of tax reform that lowers rates in a revenue neutral way, not in a way that increases the amount of tax revenue coming into the federal treasury at a time when we've got out of control spending and federal revenues are already going up.
Tomorrow the president's going to have lunch with the senators, Republican senators. Right?
Right, that's right. Yes.
You got a question for him? What are you going to ask him?
Well, you know, I think I'd love to hear the president's answer for why he doesn't believe we have a debt crisis, or why he doesn't believe we have a spending problem. You continue to hear leading Democrats in the Congress and the president talk about no debt crisis, no spending problem, you know, no need to balance the budget in 10 years. I mean, we are facing a train wreck if we don't get this thing turned around. And I think that the president, hopefully, when he comes tomorrow, we'll at least listen to what we have to say and hopefully act on it. But
I hope you ask that question. I hope you come back and tell us what he said.
That would be the triumph of hope over experience, I think, to think that they're going to be responsive to what we have to say. But we'll give it our best shot.
Okay, good. Senator, always nice to see you.